So Patty and the pair of Piffolettis up front for the Legion. Their scrum here right now, hanging on to a 3-point lead in Toronto.
Play it away. Stay there.
Keeps it. Offloads. Just wasn't meant to be. He was looking for Duplessis.
Again, Peterson trying to play the distributor. That was the combination that came up with the first try.
Let's get this done and go eat turkey all day. Start there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast. And to all our Canadian listeners, happy Thanksgiving. And to everybody else, happy whenever you listen to this. We are very excited to be recording once again. But we wanted to, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, say that we are very thankful for all of you. Our latest episode, which was fantastic with Colby Francis, hit over 1,000 views on Facebook, which is very, very rewarding for us to see that you guys enjoyed it. So thank you very much. Gentlemen, how is your weekend going? It has been beautiful weather here in Ontario, and I got to celebrate my family's Thanksgiving yesterday. So what have you guys been up to?
I spent my Saturday looking for apartments, which, you know, that's always a super fun activity. I guess it's one of those things that's kind of exciting, but it's proven to be an interesting challenge in COVID, because you had a lot of we've run into some like landlords being like, yeah, I would love to show you the place, but somebody's still currently living there, so we can't because of COVID and stuff. So little bit of interesting hiccups that I didn't really think of being an issue. So the search kind of continues and work around it now. And then you woke me up way too early on a Sunday to do this podcast, Dan. So thank you for that.
I actually got to sleep in this morning. So stop. You shouldn't go. You how long did you stay up till? Like 2?
Yeah, maybe.
Stop being an irresponsible young man.
Last night.
Stu, how are you, my friend? I'm mad at Derek now.
Well,
When are you not mad at me?
I was planning to, go to the gym, maybe catch a film at the cinema, and if I was feeling really rambunctious, hit the casinos. Unfortunately, now I can't do any of those things.
Poor Stu.
So I have just been doing meal prep and preparing for my Thanksgiving dinner. So trying new cooking techniques and improving recipes here and there, and yeah, just looking forward to just eating a lot, essentially.
Yeah. A lot of restrictions getting rolled back. Wear your masks, people. I want to get back to doing things.
Yeah, wear your masks, wash your hands, and don't be a dink. I think is the best way we can say it. We had our Thanksgiving dinner yesterday. With COVID, my in-laws have been staying here and watching my daughter, so having them here to help cook supper was great. And while they were cooking, we went and took some alpacas for a walk, which was like so much fun.
You have to what?
Outside of Peterborough, there is a alpaca walking, hiking like business. So like you take alpacas and you put them on a leash and you go for a walk with them, and they are hilarious. They're like Dobermans. Like they're super skittish, but like they'll walk with you as long as you give them snacks every now and then. But like if you walk by like a cedar tree, they go absolutely batshit because it's like they're like catnip, and they just like run through it and stuff, and it's hilarious. And they don't like they moan. They're like when they're like frustrated or like it was great. My alpaca's name was Puck.
Was Puck? Well, there you go. That's either a hockey reference or an Alpha Flight reference, depending on how nerdy the alpaca farm is.
No, I actually it's a Midsummer Night's Dream reference.
Oh, an actual educated person.
Yeah,
educated
I know.
Would know about
that was my thought. I'm like, oh, she really
sophistication.
likes like Marvel comics. Wow. No, she's like, oh yeah, no, because there's another one that's Alferion. So it's like, you are fancy. I see.
There's some sophistication at this alpaca farm.
No, it was great. It was a lot of fun. But gentlemen, the Toronto Arrows have been having a little bit of fun. We have been kind of covering their Arrow signings for the last few months, and we thought they were all done. And then the rumor,
this has been rumored for a while. I don't think we thought they were all done. They still have to sign more guys.
There was
more guys.
We thought they were all done in their back line.
Okay.
And we also talked about Tuculet in a previous episode where we said he wasn't coming, and then we said he might be coming, and it is now confirmed. The Toronto Arrows have signed Pat Parfrey, Jack McRogers, and Joaquín Tuculet. Now, we're going to start with the guys that we know first before we get into the new guy. And we'll start with Pat Parfrey. And Parfrey has shown his jack-of-all-trades abilities with the Arrows in Rugby Canada, really from the start of the 2019 season, when Parfrey was with the Rugby Canada, and then he kind of did his own little studying to be a doctor, and then he came to the Arrows and really had a really strong season with them near the end of it, and had a kind of breakout summer with Rugby Canada. Took over the 15s jersey and had a pretty strong World Cup campaign. Now, my question to you guys is, Parfrey, even when you look at their players roster, he's put as a utility back. Does he have a chance to fight for a starting spot? Or, in your opinion, and maybe the coaching staff's opinion, is his role best suited as an impact bench player where you can just throw him in wherever there's needed?
I think Parfrey's versatility is obviously probably the biggest strong point of his game. The fact that he can play essentially anywhere across the back line. He can play fly half, center, and fullback. So it does have a lot of the versatility is there for it, which is obviously that's a super clutch thing to have in a guy coming off the bench, right? Because it's like, on a typical bench, you got 5 forwards and 3 backs. One of those backs is going to be the replacement scrum half, though. So you only really have 2 guys for the rest of the back line there. So having that versatility is super important. And, even like, unless you're like South Africa, that'll roll with the 6 forwards, 1 scrum half, and an extra back on the bench. But even that, like, that's where that kind of versatility comes in. But if you also kind of look at the way South Africa kind of does that, is they have guys that start for them that can also shift around as needed. So it's kind of up to, I think, comes down to like a form thing, right? Like, and I think what we're going to kind of talk about as we dive into Tuculet signing here as well is like the Arrows have just absolute unreal depth, right? So if you really look at the team, it's like there's going to be a lot of guys fighting for starting positions on this team because no one's starting position is set in stone. Even if you started last year, like, like to take if you're a guys like Mirez and Levis, who'd be like you're used to starting, or maybe Dan Moore was there, but Dan Moore's gone, and now you have you bringing in guys like Manuel Montero or Tuculet that can play on the wing too, right? It's like now your job just got a lot harder if you're looking to earn that starting position, and it goes across the board for pretty much everybody. The centers are kind of even like the centers, right? We always talked about how you would have Lesage, Detroit, Richardson, Jones, and now you also had Parfait in that mix, and now you're also adding Tuculet, who can play in that mix too, right? So like centers is also like you can go a lot of different directions. Fly half, you can go a lot of different directions depending on what you want to do too. And you do have a lot of guys on the Arrows that also do have that versatility that can play across the back line or play at least 2 positions in the back line. So I think it's going to kind of come down to form, and I think it'll be one of the great things with the Toronto Arrows going into the 2021 season is you could probably just flat out pick your back line, like just who you think the best combination of guys is to do that. Just the best combination of 7 players, and work into like how you think that's going to work the best. And then on your bench, you just kind of can have like the 2 next guys up, because chances are you have guys that like will be able to move around in the event of injury and such that they have to do that. So I think like kind of looking at Parfait, Parfait can come off the bench and he can be an unreal presence off the bench, especially because of his versatility being a very key component of his game. But there's other guys that also bring that versatility. So you can start Parfait and put someone else on the bench, or you can start like you can start guys that can play two different positions, and then maybe put like Levis on the bench who will only come off and play wing, but you can shift a guy from the wing to somewhere else in the lineup or something.
Yeah, we saw Dan Moore do that a few times.
Yeah,
shift
exactly.
to center or shift to wing, depending on where he's
exactly.
playing.
If you have, as long as I think the key thing with the Arrows right now is that they're going to have enough guys that can play multiple positions. So I think you can just kind of roll with here's what you think is the best combination of 7. You can put you can put the scrum backup scrum half and 2 other backs on the bench, but you can also maybe pick those guys and be like, all right, if I put a back that can only play one position, say I put like Will Kelly or something on the bench, right? That means a guy like Gonzalez or Tuculet or Parfait or someone or Mirez might have to shift around in order to facilitate him coming off the bench, right? But you can still do that with those guys. So it's like, I don't know if it necessarily locks anybody into a bench position. Obviously, like you said, Parfait was great for the Arrows when he joined the team. He joined for the home game against Seattle when he came in. And then, he had 34 carries, 166 meters, 21 tackles, 87.5% completion rate, kind of played a little fly half to give Malcolm like some little bit of relief when they had the 3 games in 8 days, played a little center, played a little fullback, did the impact sub thing. So he was in his 7 games, he was incredibly versatile for the Arrows already. He is also undefeated in the regular season. So that's kind of a fun random stat. So he hasn't lost a regular season game yet. And then obviously pursuing the PhD in 2020. So he didn't get into a game during this season yet, which is unfortunate. Also, I think this is the first group of Arrow signings that has nobody that played that actually played a game in the 2020 season.
That's true.
Yeah, both of McRogers games came in
2019.
Yeah, replacing Stephen Ing. So in 2 games there, and he has played a total of 17 minutes and has not missed a tackle in Major League Rugby yet. So league leading 100% completion rate for Jack McRogers.
I feel like there needs to be it's like when you're looking at like goalie stats, it's like there needs to be a minimum minutes played.
Of course you do, but hey, it's still 100%.
Okay.
It's like, there's goalies in the NHL that have played like 1 game, got a shutout, and then never played again. And
there's actually a fantastic book about it's like called like One Night in the Show, and it's actually it's a really interesting book about how it's like stories of guys that only got to play 1 game in the NHL.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. Stu, I'm going to throw you a curveball question about Parfait. We've talked about on this podcast about kind of blooding the new generation of players. Do you want to see Parfait part of the next cycle of Rugby Canada in terms of as a starter, or do you think that his role is best suited again as an impact bench player and kind of giving a backseat to some of the younger players? And kind of all encompassing, what do you want to see for Parfait with the national team?
The issue with being a jack of all trades kind of player is that you become a master of none. You have fly halves and fullbacks and centers and wings that have trained as those positions and then become the best in those positions, which means they're obviously going to be picked ahead of players like Parfait. So I think that now that's not to say that's a bad thing. By being versatile, you can have the opportunity to come on as an impact sub and really make a difference for a game. You can also mess with your opponent's game plan, because if you come on as, say, a wing for a couple of games, and then the next game you come on as a center, then you are causing confusion and, building a benefit of you being on that team. And I think Parfait should be in that position, the ability position, and will be a benefit not only to the Arrows, but also Canada as a whole. So I think Parfait would suit coming off the bench and being an impact sub. So I'd say bleed the younger players in their definitive position, with the goal being these are the players to be picked for the next World Cup. and have Parfait there on the bench, ready to go, ready to cause a bit of disruption for the other teams. And hopefully Canada can get a few wins that way.
So here's my worry, and I love everything that Stu said because I completely agree with all of it. But when it comes to the fullback position, who do we really have? Like, if we look at some of the guys that had been like considered the up and comers, that would be like Theo Sauter, and Andrew Coe played one game at 15 and played pretty well at the World Cup. All things considered, it was the 2019 World Cup at Rugby Canada. The standards were a bit low. And then, even if you want to go even younger, as Thomas Asherwood is someone that played fullback a little bit. So those are three guys that have played some type of 15 experience, and they're all playing sevens right now. All of our wing and 15s are all playing sevens right now, and that concerns me because if we want to go with that plan, if we want to go with what Stu's saying, we have to try and pull those guys away from the sevens program, which, I mean, we've got a year and then the Olympics are over and then possibly we might get Coe and Sauter back. Like I have this like conspiracy theory that that's their plan, is they're going to play up until the Olympics and then make the jump back to 15s, because really they're in my opinion, two really important pieces to the next World Cup for Canada and qualifying. So, that is where I see the cards lying. But I think in the meantime, I don't see any reason why. I don't see anybody else that's going to put their hand up at the 15 jersey other than Parfait.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with having guys jump back and forth between 15s and 7s all the time too, right? Is that you do lose out on some players that do play those skilled positions, where you need your ability to like jump under the like the high ball, grab that. But even especially like 7s too, like just guys that have like speed to burn that are really effective in the 7s game. But yeah, like I man, when we saw the Theo Sauter through the repechage tournament, through the World Cup, through the season with the Arrows and stuff, he looks to be a great fullback. But yeah, he's playing 7s right now, so he's not. But I think that's why though. I think in kind of listening to what Stu said, and Dan, you said you agree with it. I think I kind of disagree with it a little bit. I think if you have those guys, I think I'm always a big proponent of. We talked about it when we were discussing when we're doing like our World Cup lineups and we're trying to figure out where to put DTH, and there's people saying center and stuff, but I was like, you got to play him at his best position, which is wing, right? And I think I'm a big proponent of play guys at their best position, but I think so I agree with it in that sense. But I think fullback is Parfrait's best position, and I think his kind of a bit of an X factor is that you can put him somewhere else. He's capable of playing somewhere else as like an X factor thing that he can bring to the table. But I think you are kind of looking at it. I think he is what he did show going into the World Cup campaign too, a campaign that did have Theo Sauter involved. I guess Sauter was kind of injured for a lot of it too, but I think he kind of showed through that World Cup campaign that he is maybe the best fullback in Canada. That game that he had against Tonga, where he came on in I think it was the 61st minute that he came on, scored a try almost immediately, set up 2 others all in just 19 minutes of work, and kind of gave Canada a chance to win that game. But that was kind of all him. And I think after seeing that, it was like he locked in that 15 jersey, and I think he still has it. It sucks that we don't get to see any international not any international rugby, but we don't get to see Canada involved in any international rugby this year. It's they just canceled the Halloween series, which to be honest, I thought when that announcement came down, I was like, has this not already been canceled? But it's one of those things where COVID's pretty much called an end to almost all international rugby in North America. So it's kind of unfortunate that you don't get to see some of these guys that were to be able to build off those World Cup campaigns, because nobody's it's going to be it's probably going to be a year and a half almost before the next. Like if the next tournament's going to be the ARC, what's that going to be? That's going to be a year and 7-8 months between games, right? Between international games for some of these guys. And even the MLR, the MLR is going to start in March 20th, right? March 20th, 2021. So like,
Yeah.
you go to that weekend, that's going to be almost like there's going to be guys.
That's going to
like,
be a year.
Yeah, like the full year, which I guess is part of the reason. Like, I don't know, but I guess it's part of the reason that the Arrows are going out, heading out west to Langford for that like a little like high performance camp with Rugby Canada too.
Yeah,
right?
that was just recently announced.
Yeah, although the announcement was very minimal on details of it.
Yeah.
Just with the more details to come. We'll let you know what's actually happening next week. But
It's on a need to know basis.
yeah, exactly.
Apparently, we don't need to know.
Yeah, but like I think that's good though. Like I really want more details on that. It'd be cool to see who's actually going to that. I'm guessing maybe hopefully the other Canadian MLR players that aren't Arrows are also heading out to that. But even like even out of that Canadian perspective, you can get guys like Della Vega, Levis, like who've all stayed in Canada too, right? Like they've all like they all are going to go over a year without playing a game too, right? So they need some of that game time to get into them. Guys like Diana and like a guy like Manuel Diana, who's been named to the Uruguay side for a South American tournament there. Like at least he's gonna be
the freshest out of all of them.
Yeah, pretty much. Like it's like yeah, he's gonna be the only one that's playing. So that'll be it'll be interesting. Like I think as we kind of get closer to the start of the season, I think we're going to see it in other sports too. We saw kind of with the NHL draft a little bit. A lot of teams kind of leaning toward the European guys in the draft because they're going to actually play. And I think it'll be interesting kind of coming into the Major League Rugby season because like there's obviously guys that have or teams that have guys playing playing in the Mitre 10 or playing in the Currie Cup or playing somewhere else in the world that's letting you play rugby, whereas most of the American and Canadian players are not playing right now. So that could be an interesting one just to kind of see like how fresh guys are going into the season or what an MLR preseason might look like and stuff. But that feels like a little bit of a tangent from yay, Pat Parfrey signed.
Sorry, I tend to make that happen. So looking back at the Pacific Nations Cup before we move on, two people played fullback, and that was Parfait and Peter Nelson.
Yeah, and Peter Nelson's back in Europe now too, right? So
yeah, he's playing in some Division 3 rugby in France. So
yeah, so like he's kind of back over there, and I think like I don't know, I was like I kind of feel like that, like yeah. So like if we're talking like between Parfait, Nelson, I guess Sauter, Asherwood, like it's Parfrait's still the best fullback in Canada, even if all those guys are healthy. So which I know, like, kind of unfortunate for Sauter, but, he's back now, but he's playing sevens. So it's like, like, I don't know. What are you going to do, right?
Complain about it on a podcast. That's what I'm going to do.
Complain about it. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's one of those things, man. It's like we've talked about it before. There's definitely positions where, like Rugby Canada, like we need to identify to improve, and fullback might be one of them. Fly half is definitely one of them, and scrum half is probably something that's going to be coming up with, go as we look into the future at least. But
all right, well, let's move on then. So the next player that we're going to talk about is Jack McRogers. McRogers is a hooker, and when we look at the kind of depth chart in terms of hooker, he's kind of the third string hooker, but he joins a pipeline of hookers from the U20 program. Now, my question to you guys is with Quachin, he's got the starting 2 jersey, and Ing has got the 16. But does it make more sense to keep him with the Pacific Pride program, train with them and maybe get some meaningful games? I don't know what BC rugby is looking like going into the fall. Would it make more sense for him to be there, or does practicing with the Arrows but not getting into any games unless there's an injury or a short rest week, or maybe playing against a lesser squad make more sense?
No, I think you got to keep him in with the Arrows. I think that's why they signed him. I think that makes the most sense for him. It's every team, you need 3 hookers. You need them, so you need somebody to do that. And obviously the third hooker doesn't play nearly as much, barring injury, as you said, barring injuries or suspensions. I think in the 2 games that he did get in, he played that record-setting game against the Utah Warriors. He played in the home game against the Austin, formerly known as Elite Squad. And he played well in those games. Like I said, he only has a combined 17 minutes in Major League Rugby, yet to miss a tackle. He's been good though. Like his line out throws are connecting. There was a nice little video of him throwing a ball like off like a basketball net or some sort of target, kind of beating Andrew Quattrin in a little throwing contest after training earlier this week. So he's a solid player. You need that third hooker, and I think you need guys like obviously just in the high performance training environment, right? And I think even if you don't play as much, being on the arrows, being in that environment is beneficial and it will help to develop your game. But I think in the 2 games that he has played, he has showed that he is going to be capable of playing in this league. And I think it's kind of weird. I think there's a lot of positions on the Toronto Arrows that you can kind of I think we'll be changing what the depth chart actually looks like between now and when the season actually starts. But I feel like hooker is one of those, it's Quattrin, Ing, and McRogers, which isn't necessarily a bad thing for Jack McRogers. He's still a developing player. So, but you need the third hooker. So if it's going to be, you need somebody to do the job. So it might as well be him at this point. And I like it. I wouldn't want to see him anywhere else. I think playing for the Arrows, playing in that high performance environment is great for your development. And then as you get older, as you get better, you'll start seeing more game time come in. And it's one of those things too where it's like there's 3 hookers, right? So you're one suspension, you're one injury, maybe you're even a couple just like, hey man, like this guy's not playing very well, we need to change it up a little bit away. And the team's deep enough to be able to do that, right? So it's it's this season was super short, but it's like he would have got game time in this season because it would have had to have come up on either a strategic rest or either strategic rest or, like you said, injury, suspensions, whatever would require either Quattrin or Ing to come out of the lineup. So he would have got that time. And obviously too, I think like the Arrows Academy kind of coming in, I don't think you necessarily need to send guys to the Pride. I mean, obviously the Pride is another great option, but hopefully as we're kind of seeing, MLR teams are putting a lot of effort into building up their academies. And if you can have you can maybe have some guys maybe like McRogers and stuff that you can kind of if the Arrows Academy is to be playing games, hopefully, in say 2021 or whenever we're allowed to play games again, right? If they're going to be playing games, maybe there's going to be some outlets to be able to be some of these guys that are on the Arrows that are going to be the depth players on the Arrows that want some game time. Maybe there's an option to drop them down to the academy and give them a run out for 80 minutes, against some form of competition too.
So, and I agree with you, Derek. I think that it is his best place. We had this discussion last season with Tyler Rowland, who kind of was making that bounce back and forth. So it'll be very interesting. Stu, my question to you is, how long does it really take, a guy to come to fruition? We always kind of talk in terms of hockey that defensemen and goalies tend to take longer to develop. Is that kind of similar to a forward, just in terms of their size compared to a back? Because we tend to see a lot more younger backs kind of take those starting positions away. So will it take someone like McRogers a little bit more time to kind of develop as a forward?
So I can't really speak on hockey, but my mentality is that to be better means you never stop. So now, naturally, younger players are going to be faster, have quicker reactions. And that's why there's younger players in the backs. But you can still have players in their mid-30s in the forwards. I mean, just look at Alan Wynne-Jones, who's still going strong in these 33, I believe. Then, so I'd say that it doesn't matter your age, you just need to keep making those minor improvements and you'll become a better player. And to do that, you need to be playing. I agree with Derek, you need to have 3 props in the squad because, suspensions, injuries will come up. So yeah, I think McRogers should be with the Arrows. He should be getting game time. Hopefully, a bit more this year, a few more games, keeping that 100% record. Absolutely.
Yeah. Has never missed a tackle.
But yeah,
never missed a tackle.
No, hasn't missed either of them. But I believe as well that his position is with the Arrows.
Okay.
7. I got told it's 2.
So, gentlemen, we're going to talk about this big fish now. So Joaquín Tuculet has had quite the career for Argentina, and he's one of the few players in the world that has played in every pro league that is in the world, major pro league. So he's played for the Sales Sharks.
There's a lot of pro leagues. I don't know.
Yeah, I originally realized, I'm like, oh, he probably hasn't played for the top league, so I said major. So he's played with the Sales Sharks.
He also probably hasn't played in like the Division II pro leagues and stuff too. Like there's a lot of pro leagues. Pro leagues is a lot.
God, all right, major pro leagues. So he's played for the Sales Sharks. That's the Premiership. Check that off. He's played for Bordeaux, top 14. There you go. Cardiff Blues. At the time is probably the Pro 12, but check that off the list. And he also has played in Super Rugby with the Jaguares. He has also played for the Pumas Sevens. So, that is another notch under his belt. And he has also played in 2 World Cups, 2015 and 2019. Gentlemen, we are getting a player that has a lot of experience. And he's also still only 31 years old. So he still has a lot to give to the Arrows and to MLR. My question to you is, I am someone that does not pay attention to any other type of rugby other than Major League Rugby.
Yeah, we know. We can tell based on your takes on this podcast. Yeah.
So funny. Who would be a good comparable in terms of his playing style? And we're not going to talk about his quality of playing, but and how he plays with the ball. Who can you compare him to, either being on the Arrows or maybe someone else in Major League Rugby?
I would kind of go with, I think, like his tactical kicking is unreal. He's really good at that from fullback spot. So it's like it's a good fit for the Arrows because it's exactly what kind of Sam Malcolm did from the fullback position. A lot of being able to control the territory, control field position with the boot was exceptional. He's extremely good under the high ball as well. Like you can pull up any Joaquín Tuculet highlight reel and you can just watch 10 minutes of him just catching balls. It's amazing. He's so good, so athletic, great hands. And then he's really explosive, especially in counterattacks. It kind of, you're kind of getting that little combination of kind of Malcolm for his tactical ability. You get a little bit of, if you're going, well, just go with the Arrows. It's a Canadian rugby podcast, a lot of Arrows fans listening. You kind of get that. You get a little bit of Mirez's explosiveness, especially when he's carrying the ball. The sidestep is there. You can watch him, there's videos of him, man, where it's somebody will try to tackle Tuculet and it's just a nice fend that it's just get off of me, and I'll keep going and get this crazy offload down to a winger. And that'll set up a try for Argentina. So you get a little bit of that. And then to circle kind of back to what we were talking about earlier in the podcast, you get a little bit of Pat Parfrey's versatility, except it's a little bit even more magnified. He can play fly half, he can play center, he's played wing, he can play fullback, he can play everything except scrum half. But you know what? I'm sure if
you could probably put him there and he'd be fine.
Dude, you have to. He could play scrum half. He might be able to play in the forwards. Who knows? But that's a little excessive. But basically, the point I'm trying to make, he can play anywhere from 10 to 15, which that's just to have that and a player at this skill level too. And even to give you it's kind of so he's got 56 caps for the Pumas. Also tier 1 nation, playing the rugby championship the whole time. He's beaten South Africa. He's played on teams that have beaten Ireland. He's played on teams that have beaten France. He's beaten Australia. He's scored on the All Blacks. So I mean, that's the type of guy that you're getting. He's been one of the ultimately, he's been one of the best Pumas of the last decade. And it's just his highlight reel is nuts. Honestly, if as Dan presented this question of being if you're someone that's unfamiliar with Argentinian rugby, or just do yourself a favor, type in Joaquín Tuculet on YouTube. you'll get like there's a decent amount of videos of him, man, and you can just like see highlights and stuff. And I found one that was even just like that was kind of crazy. Like early in his career, it was 2011, playing for the IRB Nations Cup, for like Los Jaguares before the Jaguars in Super Rugby. It was kind of like a nickname for like was like Argentina A, which became Argentina 15. I was trying to
It's confusing.
I was trying to do the deep dive into where does this team name come from, but all right, so basically Argentina 15. De La Vega was on that team and stuff too. And there was one highlight where it's like he was playing against Romania, and the Romanian 10 puts up like this brutal tactical kick. Like I don't even like, and he just punts it basically right into the middle of the pitch, and there's no kick chase. So Tuculet just catches the ball, and he's standing like on like the old IRB logo, and just hits a drop goal for like just because he could. Like there's no pressure. Like it was a brutal like tactical decision from Romania, but I was like, this is an awesome highlight. Like he's just like, yeah, drop goal from 45 meters because I can. And that was in 2011, and he's got better. So that's another thing, man. We missed that Sam Malcolm drop goal against Rooney, right? So this is another guy that can bring that to the table with a little bit of distance too. But also it's like, how afraid are you if you're a defending team kicking to a fullback that can just pump like 45, 50 meter drop goals for fun? So that's an interesting one. I think the thing to get really excited about too, if you do that deep dive into the Joaquín Tuculet highlights, is all the fun highlights where he links up with Manuel Montero for a try or from some other sweet play. And this is the Thanksgiving episode, and we could be thankful for a lot of things. And I guarantee you, if you watch that video, you will be very thankful that they are wearing a very different shade of blue and white together again. So it's like, yeah, there's some plays that are just like, oh, it's like there was one I saw, it was against the Sharks in 2017 where Tuculet just kind of gives like, just kicks a high ball to himself, gathers it, fends off a defender, pops an offload, and it's just like the winger kind of goes down, which is unreal. Well, that wasn't Montero. I glanced at a different try on my notes, but so I didn't really get that transition was super smooth. But there is other plays. That one highlight that got circulated when Montero signed his unreal try against Ireland. Go back and watch that. It starts with a Tuculet take, just under the high ball, beats like 2 or 3 Irish players that were all kind of chasing it. Gathers the ball and is able to start Montero's try. From that, there's plays where they're kind of just like interlinking, like it'll be like Tuculet will offload to Montero, Tuculet will keep following up in the play, so when Montero gets tackled, he can offload it back to Tuculet finishes a try. There's a lot of great plays like that with the two of them kind of like linking up. Yeah, so like it'll be nice to see, and I think like having some of those Argentinian guys that he's familiar with on the Arrows is going to be a big help for him too, because it's like, you're kind of like, you put him in the back three, put him at fullback with Montero on his wing, like that's going to do some damage in Major League Rugby, man.
Yeah, when it comes to playing style, I think Derek's hit like the nail on the head. Seriously, even
because unlike Dan, I watch other rugby.
Well, I'm going to say to all our listeners that
hey, Dan, family show. This is on video now. You can't do that anymore. I have to spend more time editing to pixelate that. Sorry, Stu. I'll let you.
No. Once the children are finished, I'll speak.
Yes, yeah. The kids table this Thanksgiving is going to get a little rowdy, I think.
Anyway, I would recommend any rugby fan in general just to Google or go on YouTube and search for Joaquín Tuculet try the year, which he won in 2017.
I didn't even mention that one.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. His record is so impressive that you can completely bypass something like that. No, there's compilations for different years, different seasons, and I think one of the players I feel that he would emulate that a lot of Arrows players would know would be Toma de la Vega, in the sense of they're both teammates that are absolute workhorses. So I know, obviously,
I was wondering where you were going with this.
Well, they're both men.
I get
that's where the similarity is. No, the point I'm getting across is that to be a good player, you also have to be a good teammate as well. You have to be willing to do the work, and you obviously put the training in. And obviously, we can see from Tuculet's like highlight reels that this is a player that does the work. And now, obviously, as a fullback and wing, the odds are that the tries are going to go your way because that's
your job
of the game. Exactly. But it's also watching him when he's in like on the defensive streak or, passing off to players who can get away and help score the try as well. That this is a player that you want on your team because he is one of the guys that's going to do the work. And yes, of course, being in his position, he will be the one who dots the ball down over the line, but he also knows when to offload and when to, be a bit more defensive and get involved that way. So I think this is a fantastic investment for the Arrows. And of course, that experience will then seep into the other players and hopefully a more cohesive unit because of it.
Yeah. I think if you just kind of like look at the grand scope of all the signings that the Arrows made, right? Like over like this offseason, so over like Tuculet, Montero, Cortez, Gonzalez, Wadden, Vikilani, like it's like all the additions just absolutely unreal. I think looking ahead to next year, I mean, you're kind of seeing some teams as we're seeing all the other signings around the league too. I think like New York's having a great offseason, NOLA's having a great offseason. But San Diego just lost like two of their best centers. Which is part of the reason why NOLA's having a great offseason too. But yeah, like Seattle, we don't really have a ton of info on what their lineup's going to look like. We assume that they'll look somewhat similar, but who knows? But it's like I think like seeing the roster that the Arrows have put forward, like right now, I feel like maybe you guys, I don't know. Let's see what your opinion is on this. But it's like if the Arrows don't go like 14-2 and win the Shield, it's a disappointing season.
I would agree with that.
Maybe you can go. I mean, maybe you can go 13-3 and win the Shield still, and it'll be a fine season. I mean, ultimately, you have to win the Shield. I think this team has to win the Shield.
Here's why I have such high expectations for the Arrows, and yeah, I agree with you. Teams like Rooney and NOLA have done such a good job of adding really interesting acquisitions to their teams. But with all of the pieces that they've been picking, especially in their back line, they're finding guys that have either played together or have played similar styles together.
Know each other too, right? Like
Montero, Gonzalez, Tuculet, all have played in some form Argentinian rugby, have played with each other, very similar systems. When you come into the first couple of weeks of the season, they're going to rely on that to play with each other. Again, if they're all in the starting 15, and again, we're going to talk about that pretty soon. And then as the season goes on, they're going to then meld into the Arrows style of play, which they're probably going to have a huge factor in how that looks. So, I think that is such a large benefit. When you look at like teams like Rooney, they've kind of just picked really good pieces, but it's going to take time for that to mesh together. So add, Quintaguati and some of their other pieces. Like it's really going to take some time for that to build. Now, again, I don't know how long they're going to have for a training camp or whatever like that. So that might help with that. But, we've seen teams kind of, look at how the Gilgroni started their season. They had a lot of guys come late, and it wasn't until, the last couple of weeks before COVID shut things down when they really were getting into a groove, and who knows what they would have ended up like. So it's very interesting.
I think ultimately too, like Neil Davidson had that little piece on Tuculet's signing where like, they were talking about how Thomas De La Vega, who Stu mentioned, played a big role in bringing Tuculet over here. Just, To be able
You're
to
answering the next question before I asked it.
Oh, well, that's how good I am at this whole podcasting thing. I can or I have a script. Who knows? But maybe we have a game plan.
Maybe this is all planned ahead.
Yeah, exactly. For people that don't know, I know it really sounds like we have no idea what we're doing most of the time, but we do actually attempt to plan how these go. But Dan usually derails them all. So, but I think I think ultimately though, you kind of have like De La Vega and Tuculet kind of knowing each other. I mean, it helps, man. It helps when you can bring in, I guess, guys that, like you said, guys that you have played with, guys that you're friends with, guys that you work well with together. Like you said, it's like we've already you can find videos of Montero and Tuculet playing together, and it is so much fun. So it's like hopefully they can bring that to little arrows blue and white instead of the Argentinian blue and white. But I think it's great, and I think it's even like why you kind of see, like, I even remember Leandro Levis came to Toronto. Levis had I don't necessarily want to say he had a choice, but he had two teams that he was thinking about going to, and the big thing that swung it into Toronto's favor was that Toronto had Gaston Mirez, and that's a big reason for why he came over. And so having guys that it's a good recruiting tool, especially like if guys are having a good time playing for Toronto, they're enjoying the city, they're enjoying the culture of the team. I wouldn't this is what you kind of end up with. You end up with the ability. Tuculet had contract offers from premiership teams. Like the guy can play in the premiership, and he chose to come here. And I guess part of that is because Thomas De La Vega is his friend. So that's if that's what you're able to do by having that, it's a good networking thing, build that culture, get that word of mouth out, and you end up with great players like Tuculet coming over to Toronto.
Yeah, I'd actually like to share a quote from Mark Winokur, who said, Tuculet is making the move for all the right reasons, and we're excited to have him here on a multi-year deal, which, is obviously indicating that he's not just a 1 year. It
indicates at least two.
At least two.
Which is big because Toronto has really never mentioned how long any of these deals have been. For all we know, in 2019, some of these guys might have signed multi-year deals, but they never really talked about it. So this is really the first guy that they've kind of talked about, being a multi-year deal.
Yeah. The rest of the quote goes, Tuculet will fit in perfectly to our culture, and he has expressed a keen desire to get out and work with all the great young talent in Ontario and help build the game. And, that I think that's obviously a great thing. We know that Toronto has these training days that allows young players, kids to come along and be coached by these players. And the community outreach is, I think, one of the great benefits for the Arrows. So bringing Tuculet along to be immersed in that kind of culture, maybe give a few Spanish lessons so we know what the Spanish for try and what are you doing, ref, so that we can scream on the pitch. I think Winokur's right. I think he will be a perfect fit for the culture, the team, and the city.
So, gentlemen, we're going to play a little bit of a game now because we've talked about the Arrows' depth to nausea, and we're going to prove how insane their depth is, or attempt to. So, what I have
may not work.
What I have in my ball cap is the names of all of the players that are considered backs minus our two scrum halves. As of right now, we only have two. We don't know what's going on with Jamie McKenzie right now. So what I'm going to do is I am going to draw names out of the hat for all three of us. And I will give each one of you guys a few minutes to think about who's going to be in your lineup, where you want to put them, and then we will announce our lines. So I'm going to start with you, Derek. I don't have a coin with me. My wallet is upstairs, and so is my coin jar. So what I'm going to use is I have a D4 dice. Oh. So odds.
You have to put it over your face.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, you just got to. There you go. All right, D4 dice.
D4 dice.
Dan plays a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. He hasn't mentioned this on the show before.
Yeah, I never mentioned it. So odds, you're getting Higgins. Evens, you're getting Ferguson.
Okay.
Odds.
So odds was Ferguson?
Odds was Ferguson.
Odds was Ferguson. Okay.
So you got Ferguson as your scrum half. Your first player is Ben Lesage. Your second player is Juan Cruz Gonzalez. Your third player is Taylor Adams. Your fourth player is Mitch Richardson. Your fifth player is Johnny Sheridan. And your last player, Manuel Montero. That's a nice, tidy little lineup there.
That's a sweet. I was gonna say that's a sweet lineup.
That's an easy decision-making lineup. All
yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's not easy.
Stu, you are next, my friend. So, again, odds is Sheridan, evens is Higgins. You got evens.
Evens, Jason Higgins. All right.
Jason Higgins. All right. So your first player is Taylor Adams.
Okay.
Did you reshuffle these after you put them in?
I reshuffled them. Pat Parfrey. Gaston Mirez. Will Kelly. Juan Cruz Gonzalez. Johnny Sheridan. So there are your 6.
Ooh. Okay.
Okay. And then I will go last. Odds is Ferguson. Evens is Higgins. I have Jason Higgins. Okay. My first player is Mitch Richardson.
I'm trying to think of like, are you shuffling these, or I'm like, it's also only 14 guys, so I feel like the odds of people getting pulled twice.
We're gonna get similar guys. I got Ben Lesage as well. So
yeah, man, you gotta
there's my
mix
center.
You gotta like shake up that Peterborough pizza.
I'm shaking it. I am
close it and shake it, man. You gotta know how to.
God. Manuel Montero.
That guy's gonna be a beast, man. I am so excited for him.
Pat Parfrey. Joaquín Tuculet. So I have 1, 2,
first Tuculet.
3, 4, 5. And then Will Kelly. Okay. Alrighty then. So, Derek, you got the names first. So, who are you going with?
So, like, I think the point that when I came up with this idea, the point that I was trying to illustrate is like how good and how deep this team is that you can like, I was just like, what would a random lineup look like if you just drew names out of a hat? So I got my lineup with the names that you gave me would be Ferguson at 9, Adams at 10, Montero at 11. And then I had 2 centers, Richardson and Lesage. I went with Richardson at 12 and Lesage at 13. Although I feel like maybe you could flip that, but I'm okay with it either way. Sheridan 14 and Juan Cruz Gonzalez at 15. And, kind of looking at that, I'm like, that lineup can win MLR games, just as from Dan just reaching into his hat and being like, who would play today? We've seen Sheridan busted out a 107-meter game against Houston when he stepped in to play that, with Levis and Mirez both hurt. Like, I'm full confidence in his ability to, exceed at the Major League Rugby level. Same with Mitch Richardson, and Ben Lesage, obviously, he Canadian center, World Cup, Montero, Gonzalez, Adams. Like, I don't really think I need to I don't really need to go into depth to explain how this would actually be a good lineup if it ever actually came to fruition during this season. Stu, who'd you end up with?
So my order, well, Higgins and Adams as fly half. On the wing, I have put Mires and Kelly, and that's only because I've put Parfait and Sheridan at the centres. And as fullback, I have Gonzalez. I think, obviously, I think having
you didn't get a good positional draw there. I think.
Having multiple fullbacks / fly halves.
Yeah,
puts me in
you got the short end of the action.
To be honest, I'm disappointed that I've got Kelly on the wing and not Detroit. So, but we'll make do. We'll make do.
All right, there's random names. I got a great position draw. I actually
you and I did pretty well. But see, would you not want to put Kelly like at like 12 as like that second receiver kind of position, like Farrell, and then like put Sheridan on the wing?
Well, I'd probably put Parfait on the wing instead of Sheridan, but because Parfait is a utility back, he will have been trained. I think there's a clear training difference between centers and wings, so I think Parfait would have a bit of the edge to go in center. I'm guessing there's been like a massive injury during this game or during the previous game that had Kelly on the wing.
See, I feel like,
but that's the thing. I've like multiple options for drop goal. As soon as you're in the 22, it's like, oh no, it's another drop goal. There's another one.
See,
who's he gone to? Oh, it's Sheridan. Oh, he's passed the it's a drop goal again.
So I feel like my lineup represented how I was like when we first started this segment. I was like, this is either going to work great or be terrible. I feel like my lineup was this is working great, and what Stu got was here's every fly half and fullback on the team, and you got to figure out who to put in centers and wings. And all right, Dan, I'm assuming somewhere in between.
Well, listen, like Meatloaf says, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So I've got Higgins as my 9. I got Will Kelly at 10. Richardson and Lesage are my duo in my centers. I got Richardson at 12, Lesage at 13. I got Montero at 11, Tuculet at 14, and Parfait at 15. I'm pretty sure that lineup is going to do pretty damn well in any MLR game.
That could win some MLR games.
That could win some MLR games.
Stu's lineup could probably win a couple MLR games, but that's weird. It's weird. It didn't work out too well for Stu, but I guess the draw landed in.
We make do with what we have.
And again, the point of this whole little exercise is just to prove how deep this lineup is. And it might just be familiarity. I mean, if we really did deep dive into some other teams, I'm sure that we would be pretty satisfied. But they've done a really good job of signing a lot of players that are just so versatile that any week, depending on who they're playing, they can have a good lineup.
Yeah, I just don't think any other teams have great backlines. Noel's got a great backline. Even San Diego, even with JP and Nanu shipping out, they still have a great backline. Like there's teams. Seattle's backline's great too. Like there's teams that have great backlines, especially the better teams in the league, the Toronto, New York, NOLA, Seattle, San Diego, like those teams, like there's teams out there with great backlines. So I think if you were to go with almost like, here's what you would start with the Arrows, and then here's maybe like the second best backline without any of those guys, right? The Arrows are going to have, I think, the second best backline without any of your starters across the entire league, and they would probably have like the third best backline without using any of the first guys from the first two across the league too. And I think like that's kind of part of what I was saying though, is like what's going to make them that good. It's like this is like, you can like Mark Winokur and Chris Silverthorne aren't going to draw names out of a hat, right? Like they actually get to look at this. Like they're not.
I hope they do. I hope they have a game and they're like, okay, well, everyone's been playing fantastic. Let's do this.
Yeah, exactly. Let's throw darts, right?
Let's put all the wingers and fullbacks on.
Yeah. Let's do that. Yeah, exactly. Do Stu's lineup. But like they're not good, right? So it's like they actually get to sit there, analyze training camp, analyze the game film of the guys, and actually put out what they think is their best lineup. And it's like it's gonna be insane. And I think training camp is going to be so much fun to watch, being like, even like, okay, who starts at fly half? You can have Adams, Gonzalez, Kelly. Who starts in the centers? It's going to be the centers is going to be the same as it was this year between Jones, Richardson, Detroit, and Lesage, which is like all 4 of them start on the vast majority of MLR teams too. the back three, you can put Montero, you can put Gonzalez, you can put Sheridan, you can put Mirez, you can put Tuculet. That's going to be nuts. You could put Parfait. I know I forgot someone there. You could put Sean Windsor. We didn't even mention Sean Windsor in this whole thing yet. Sean Windsor's already proven that he can play in Major League Rugby, even though, his spot kind of, he kind of lost his spot when a lot of the players at the end of the ARC kind of came back. But, so it's like the depth on this team is just absolutely nuts. And I think too, like, the depth on this team at forward is also nuts too. Like the pack is crazy. Like you look at like the front row, you would have like, Asiata, who's the only like I guess official loose head that's been signed, but like say Brower, Lynott was doing some work with the Arrows, so maybe that's a good indication for his future. But we don't have all the
well. Let's not get too far into the pack. We'll have a day one day where we'll talk.
No, for sure. But it's like the point is like the pack's also nuts, right? Even with the guys that we know we do have, right? Like and it's one of those things where I kind of I'm looking back at the game this season where Toronto played Atlanta, and Toronto, like there was a little bit of strategy with that, knowing that they had to play Colorado 4 days later, right? So Winokur put guys like Andrew Quattrin, Lucas Rumball, Rob Brower, Gaston Mirez on the bench, right? And they went into that game, they were down at halftime. All those guys came on and then they killed Atlanta, right? And it's like I kind of look at that, and it's like I look at that game and I look at the way the Springboks won the World Cup. The Springboks kind of did a little bit to the extreme or whatever with the 6 forwards, right? Is like they brought in a new scrum at the halftime, like that, which is nuts. But the thing with the Springboks is it's like their starting front row was the best front row in the World Cup, and their backup front row was the second best front row in the World Cup. So they were able to use that to to just destroy teams. They destroyed teams the whole tournament doing
for sure.
And and I kind of wonder if that's like kind of a play, like not to the same extent. Like I don't necessarily think the 6 and 2 is going to make sense, because the Arrows are really back heavy. Like their strength is the depth in their backs. Not that the depth in the forwards is backs. That's also still great, but the backs are like ridiculous, as we're kind of getting into here. And I kind of wonder if that's a thing that you do, right? Is like if you can be like, all right, get like a really good like 40-50 minute shift out of your starters, and then you could, like some of the lineups that you're kind of looking at, you can bring on like Mirez, Levis, like you can bring on Parfait, like you can bring on like fully capped players. I did a lineup on Layman Sports, which is just like the capped guys, and it's like there's still 2 capped guys. Like if you just took all the capped backs and started the capped guys only, it would be, you would still have 2 capped players not on the bench, or like not even starting in the game, and then you would which whoever they would be. I think on mine I did Parfait and Mirez, I had on the bench, but even if you did that, you still don't have like Adams or Gonzalez. Like it's like the lineup, like the team's so deeply stacked, so you're not even going to start all your capped guys, probably, because you have Taylor Adams, who obviously isn't capped, but he's also from New Zealand, so it's a little bit harder to come by a cap in that country. But like it's so stacked, man. And like I think if you can do something maybe like Atlanta, like even with the forwards, like you can, like guys like Brower, Cortez can come off the bench, Wadden, Francis, Milazzo, Wainwright, like you can have any of those guys on the bench for you too. Higgins at scrum half, you can do any combination of, like you said, like Mirez, Richardson, Jones, Sheridan, like you can have
a lot of versatility. That's for sure.
You could put Tuculet on the bench, man, and just be like, cool, yeah, you guys are starting to get tired with 25 minutes left in this game, and here's Joaquín Tuculet. Like, have fun with defending this when you're gassed at the end of the game, right? And he's fresh. Like it's like it'll be like, yeah, like I don't know. Like I wonder if that's a strategy that the Arrows can go with. Is just have an absolutely loaded bench that no team in the league can compete with, and bring that out in the second half and destroy teams.
We're going to move on, gentlemen, because we're running short on time. But we wanted to talk about another league that's kind of started up this weekend. The Premier 15s, the women's division in England, has started up this weekend, and it is quickly becoming a home for some of North America's best women's players. Now, currently, Canada is 3rd in the world, and the U.S. is 7th. I want you guys to just give a wild guess on who is the next America's team that is in the rankings. Who comes up next? Just quickly.
Argentina.
Mexico.
Jamaica.
Ooh.
So my point of bringing this up is
the women's world rankings look very different than the men's world rankings.
And competition for Canada in the US in the Americas is not up to their caliber. It's non-existent. So they have been having to compete against teams like New Zealand and England and France, which of course they're all close to each other, and Italy and Australia. However, that requires a lot of travel.
A map or a geography textbook if you think those countries are close to each other.
I literally just said they are not close together, Derek. You need to put your listening ears on.
It sounded like you said they are close to each other.
Aren't close together.
You got to enunciate.
Which has been causing quite a problem with developing Canadian 15s players. You know, Canada and the US are just not getting enough test matches, and so it's causing quite a problem. So
nobody's getting test matches this year.
2020 has caused chaos, but before that as well. So this Premier 15s is kind of creating a little bit of a power vacuum in terms of it's collecting some of North America's best players. Currently, there are 8 Canadian internationals signed to play with the Premier 15s. There are Olivia Demarchant, Emily Tulitsi, McKinley Hunt, and Taylor Black at Exeter, and Paige Ferries has signed for the Worcester Warriors. And then we also have Sarah Sabatka signed for the Loughborough Lightning, and including her on that team will be a few players from Canada as well. So it is going to be a very interesting season.
And Courtney Holtkamp and Deleka Meninen are also on Loughborough.
Perfect. Thank you. So there are apparently more signings expected to be coming in the coming weeks. We also know that there was a trio of American players signed by Exeter as well. Kate Zachary, Gabby Cantorna, and Janine Duncan. So, more North American players coming over. Now, my question to you guys is, you guys watched a little bit of it, and I watched a little bit of it this morning. Who are some players that you're excited to watch?
So she played yesterday. My player that I'm excited to watch, and I was excited watching her, is Taylor Black. The best story I've read about her is that her team was on a under-17 rugby tour in Germany. And after their side got eliminated, a French academy side in the tournament said they needed reinforcements. And they skipped the other players and said they specifically wanted Black for the tournament. Now, this was an under-17 tournament, and at the time, Black's teammates were 16. Black herself was 13. She is now 20. She is international experience. She's played, obviously, with the national team as well. She should be a marquee player going forward. Like, if this was a guy, we would, be pining all over him, saying that this is the fly half that we need to have for the next 2 or 3 World Cups. That should be the same treatment that Taylor Black gets.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say Taylor Black too. She looked really good in the game yesterday. Had one bad pass that resulted in a try against Exeter, but other than that, I think, like you said, Stu, like one of the big things with her is she started playing rugby when she was 5. So if we would go back to our conversation we had with Andrew Ferguson, he was mentioning that he felt like he had a huge edge on a lot of his competition just because he played because he started playing before everyone else. And I think that's kind of the same situation that Black is kind of facing. She has unreal skills with ball in hand. You can kind of see like even the game yesterday, despite Exeter being on the wrong end of the scoreboard, you can kind of see like the skills with the cutout pass, being able to just move the ball quickly and in traffic, put her teammates through gaps in the defense as well. It's unreal to see. And yeah, like she got capped at 18 years old, and it's impressive what she's done at such a young age. And I am also looking forward to seeing what she has as her career kind of develops. And it's great to see so many Canadians are playing Premier 15s as well.
An interesting tidbit I found out is that Taylor Black in 2017 won the Rugby Canada Young Player of the Year award for women. For the men, the same year, Cole Keith.
Oh, there you go.
And I'm my connection to Cole Keith is very similar because I'm also picking a prop from New Brunswick. I am picking Olivia Demarchand. Unfortunately, she was not in the lineup with the Chiefs this weekend. Maybe that's why they lost. Who knows? But she has been one of the best props.
Brand new team too,
which is very difficult. And I think that again, it's going to take time for some of these teams to develop that chemistry. But Demarchand is 29, and she has been a staple for Canada since 2013. She's been to 2 World Cups. She's part of the silver medalists in 2014. Interesting fact about Olivia is that not only is she a very, very impressive prop, she also played a little bit of women's tackle football when she was living in New Brunswick. So she's got a little bit of a dual sport. She played running back and defensive end in the Maritime Women's Football League. So that's pretty cool. But you know what? She's got experience in England as well. She played for the Saracens for a few years from 2016 to 2018. So this is actually her second stint in Europe. So I'm very excited to watch her. I remember watching her play in the 2014 in that semifinal and also in the final. I also remember watching her in the 2017 World Cup. They were playing Hong Kong, and they beat Hong Kong by like 100 points. It was wild. I was sitting there in a barbershop getting a haircut, and I asked them to put the game on, and it was crazy. So I am very excited to see her play. I think it's fantastic that the Premier 15 put the games on YouTube, or at least the Exeter Chiefs game. So you know what? We've talked about
hopefully more games end up on
hopefully
YouTube
more
and
games
stuff, yeah.
for sure. And my other question, guys, is with the problem that we kind of just mentioned about the lack of national games in North America, is there a partnership that can be developed with MLR teams? We're seeing that they're developing academy teams.
Yeah. Do you mean like a WMLR kind of thing? Or
Yeah,
yeah.
we can set it up however they want. It doesn't have to be a full professional league yet. But all of these teams are starting to develop their strength and conditioning programs. They're starting to develop places where they can work out. Could there be some type of system put into play where it could be a large club program partnership that they could use to develop the U.S. and Canadian national teams, because they need time, they need caps, and they need to play.
Yeah, I think that it would be like having like a women's Major League Rugby or some sort of equivalent. To me, seems like a thing that is like very, very, very far down the road into the future. It'd be nice to have happen, but that could be like we might be talking like 30, 40, 50 years. Like we got to get the men's competition kind of off the ground too. But I think and women's pro rugby, like this league, even like Premier 15s is still kind of new. The French competition, the Elite One Feminine, is that's still kind of like in that semi-pro, like not entirely completely professional sort of stage. And Rugby Quebec sent 19 players to go play in that competition this year as well, which is another huge benefit. So there's a lot of Canadian players playing overseas. And I think as far as starting up say like a professional North American women's rugby league, which would be awesome, but I don't know if the resources and stuff will be there right away. But I think the big difference, I think, between like the benefit for Major League Rugby is that in a lot of cases, Canadian and American players aren't necessarily good enough to play overseas in Europe or in Super Rugby, or because of certain rules that limit foreign player slots and stuff, they kind of get pushed to the side, which is why we're like, we needed more Canadian players playing in professional environments. We need more American players playing in professional environments. I think the interesting flip on it for the women's game is that Canada and also the United States are like elite nations in women's rugby. Like Canada is the ranked third overall. Has a couple silver medals and stuff at the World Cup, and it's like the Premier 15 teams as well as like the French pro teams will be more than happy to take Canadian players. So the Canadian players can develop and play at the highest level that is possibly available to them, right? And even if it's not necessarily in Canada, and then you can come back to Canada when you got to do your duties and stuff for the national team. But I think it's kind of like most women's sports, which is like, it's just kind of maybe kind of unfortunate. Like we're even seeing it here with hockey, where it's like professional women's hockey is still something that's in its infancy, and there's a lot of women's sports leagues that are kind of doing that right now. So and Major League Rugby is also in its infancy, so everything's kind of coming together at the same point in time. And I think I would love to see a professional women's rugby league in North America. That'd be awesome, but I feel like that might be something that's very far down the line in the future. But in the meantime, because Canada is so good at women's rugby, top 3 country in the world, there's going to be a lot of spots for any of the women on the national team to go play over in Europe. And hopefully that continues, and hopefully the Premier 15s continues to develop to be a better league for everybody involved.
So my question to you is, we've seen the WNBA have a successful couple of years. We've seen the women's soccer league down in the States be successful. Would it not make sense to capitalize on momentum of women's sports growing? And I agree with you that rugby is so small that it's hard to kind of advertise men's rugby. But I feel like we're ignoring a population of female sports fans that could help gain momentum. And I think in terms of, just need to find the right backers. I think that hockey did not do a good enough job, that Hockey Canada, the CWHL did not do a good enough job to advertise the product. I think that's what it comes down to, is we need to advertise the product. And I don't think we need to be as large as MLR. Like, have 4 teams, 1 Canadian, 3 American teams, and it'd be maybe just a couple of round robin games in a year, and then do it at different MLR teams. I think there's a way that we can make it work, that we can have our best players playing, or if it's not our best players playing in the Premier 15, we still have some of our young up and comers. Like, there are so many female women that give up playing rugby because they don't have the opportunities, or they're playing club rugby and they're saying, what's the point of me playing club rugby when it's not going to lead me to playing any more national team games? I feel like there is an opportunity to be played. I think MLR is trying to do so many things, like get a team in Hawaii, or expand rapidly, or trying to do Vegas games. I think it's about priorities. I think that if we just say, okay, we want to make women's rugby a priority for MLR, we can cut out things like the Vegas weekend. I think there is a middle ground that can be met between what you're saying, Derek, and what I want for the future of women's rugby. Because I think we see how successful the women's sevens program has been. I think we're doing a disservice to the 15s game by saying that we should leave it up to the European leagues. I feel like that MLR can play a big role in it by saying, we're going to do a MLR sponsored 15s tournament. That could be the best step into it, and saying it could even just be clubs, and for a couple weeks you guys can train at your local MLR training facility if a team has one. I know the Arrows kind of rent spaces and stuff like that, but training with their coaches, or having a few technical skill practice with some of the players. Like, I feel like we can make that happen, but it needs to be a priority for management and for the fans.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Dan on this, and Derek, in the sense of, I would love to see a 13 plus women's MLR league. But at the same time, I know it's not going to happen for 2021. I'd say that having even like small divisional tournaments, as Daniel said, would be of huge benefit to the women's game. And like they could be paired with MLR teams, and they could be kept in the same geographical areas. So you could say, we'll have like the Arrows women's team or the Rooney women's team, and like the Free Jacks women's team and DC's women's team, and they all play each other on a round robin tournament. You know, maybe there'll be a fourth Texas team, and then you can have like a Texas bubble of women's teams going on there. Because reality kicking in, rugby, whilst being one of with the men's World Cup being one of the biggest sporting events in the world, the women's unfortunately isn't. But you don't improve that by just going, well, that's the way it's always been. You've got to try different things. You've got to build players up. And there was the big thing in England a few years ago, and of that the England women's 15s team would be fully professional in that they would be paid by the RFU to play these games whilst they were playing in the Premier 15s. And that's the thing. We have to be working towards that point. And we can say, oh, yes, this will be hard. Yes, it's going to take time. That doesn't mean you give up. It means you keep going until you reach that point. And then when you reach that point, okay, you say, okay, we want to make an entirely professional women's league. And then you aim for that and you keep going. And that's how you improve everything going forward. So, incremental steps, like I say, maybe even if it's just, 4 teams to begin with, and they're completely amateur or semi-pro, but that's the start. It's not the end.
And let's not kid ourselves. I mean, USA Rugby is currently dealing with the aftermath of bankruptcy, and let's talk about Rugby Canada. They are
you now to talk about it.
They are dealing with their own financial issues as well.
Before we kind of get into that though, too, it's like obviously like having a women's professional league would be awesome and stuff. It's just, and I think what everybody's saying here, it's like I think everybody would support that. It's just finding a way to make that work is going to be the challenge, especially since like I said, like the places where rugby is the most popular in the world are just starting their own like women's pro leagues. Like,
so we need to make it a priority. Stop doing stupid things like doing a weekend in Vegas. How much money did that cost the league? How much money did that cost?
How much money does starting a professional women's league cost?
Let's do baby steps. Let's put the money into grassroots programs so that way clubs can start to build up their ability to train these women. And then it's baby steps. I frame this as what can MLR do to develop a successful league, and I understand, and Derek's trying to be a realist, and I appreciate that because he keeps me grounded. That's what Derek does. He's a good guy. But I think that we need to realize that MLR is not doing anything for women's rugby, and I think that's something that needs to start. And it could be little things. It could be very tiny things. We're seeing what they're doing. We're seeing what the Arrows are doing for youth rugby. Okay, well, let's say that maybe the Arrows need to start doing that for women's teams in Toronto. Start paying them a little bit more attention. There are multiple avenues that we can go into this about this, and maybe one day we should have someone come on and talk about it. Because again, at the end of the day, we're three men that have experience in rugby, but we don't know what women's rugby players go through. So maybe that's something that we need to look at in the future.
I will recommend that if anyone's listening to this wants to get more involved or watch more of women's rugby but doesn't know where to start, there's a YouTube channel called The Women's Rugby Show, which has done previews of the Premier 15s for this season. They've also got talking points such as the new rule changes. That was where I've been looking at for the past few days, so I definitely recommend them.
Awesome. And we've talked previously about COVID causing chaos in the sports world. Rugby Canada has kind of announced their financial situation and have made announcements that they've made cutbacks to their staff. And kind of one of the more bigger cuts was that they let go Al Sharon, who is a legend in Canadian rugby. In accordance with those cuts, they've also announced that they've called it different things, but the Halloween weekend in Vancouver, where Canada was going to play the US, and then the Fijian 15s would play the New Zealand 15s, but not the Maori All Blacks, and that's confusing to Dan, but that's fine. Now, my question to you guys to end the show, they're different teams. I understand. How will these decisions bear on fans' minds going into the future? I mean, you talk to any Canadian rugby fan, and everyone knows who Al Sharon is. So, to let him go sucks,
Yeah. I feel like,
and a lot of people were looking forward to that Vancouver weekend, even if it was going to be behind closed doors, something to watch would have been amazing. Do we think that fans are going to react poorly to these decisions, or have fans been pretty understanding about most of this?
I don't know. I think it's like, there's unfortunately with the current world climate, there's a lot of people that have been laid off. And it's unfortunate that it also is trickling into Rugby Canada and the rugby world. I think to me though, the big kind of takeaway is like you kind of look at the positions that were axed, and you have Mark Lemon, the chief commercial officer, Alana Gattinger, the team manager for the men's 15s team, a bunch of the event staff and the ticketing staff as well, and the manager of the official development. So it's like you kind of look at the position titles that are gone, and the only thing I kind of look into that is like that sounds like you feel like you're not playing rugby for a very long time. Like if you're, or at least the men's side aren't. The women's side is, with the Premier 15s is like they still got a World Cup to prepare for. Without that, they have to somehow figure out a way to prepare for that without actually having international test matches, which will be interesting. And which is another big benefit to everybody going either to play in England or play in France. But yeah, I don't know. Like it just seems like with the people, and obviously with the cancellation of the Halloween weekend, which I kind of thought was already canceled, or I don't think anybody was shocked in reading that announcement that the Halloween weekend was canceled. But I think with a lot of these teams though, it's kind of like it kind of comes down to just like the position, like Alana Gattinger's gone. Like that's like she's such a key and important part of that team and like that management group that oversees the men's 15s team and like the World Cup tours, all the tours that they go on. Like that's all like what her job is, right? Managing the team on the tours. So it's like I don't know. It just, and the commercial officer, events, ticketing staff being gone, like that's like okay.
Sounds like they're not going to be hosting a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we don't have any rugby to sell people on right now. Gattinger being like even like Al Sharon, like that's a big like marketing piece. Like you said, he's one of 3 Canadians in the World Rugby Hall of Fame, right? With Gareth Rees and Heather Moyse. And yeah, like I just like, yeah, it kind of sucks. It's also, I think it's an indication that that we're probably not seeing a whole lot of Canadian international test rugby in the near future. I think the worst part about it, I think the optics, like optically of hiring, which they did kind of address in the press release of hiring Rob Howley and then also cutting a bunch of jobs.
Staff go, yeah.
It doesn't, and I get that Alan Vanson in the press release or in the interviews and stuff that came out with it, acknowledged that and was like, this probably doesn't look good, but it's like he tried to do his best to indicate that it's an unrelated thing, but it's still, it's like you got to think like that was kind of like one of the like the first thoughts of like a lot of people, because it's really
hiring this special Wales coach, and we can't keep
we can't keep
Al Sharon, but we can keep Rob Howley.
Yeah, and like I'm not upset about I'm not upset about Rob Howley being hired or anything, but it's just like, yeah, that wasn't that's bad timing.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think that's the thing though too, is like we've seen that in a lot of like other sports and stuff right now, like especially like, NHL free agency just kicked off, and it's like I'm sure like all the employees of those teams that got laid off or whatever from like the NHL teams are like having fun watching free agency and seeing guys get signed to multi-million-dollar contracts and stuff.
For sure.
Right? It's like that's kind of like a tough go. Not that you wouldn't, not that like the NHL is still ticking, so you got to sign players, right? So that's the nature of it. Same with Major League Rugby, players are still getting signed, but it's I think it's just the signing. Yeah, I think that's probably the worst part about it is like even if it is unrelated, which fair enough. But it's like it's just not the great like look, I guess, in order to do it. It sucks for everyone. I mean, nobody wants to see people lose their jobs and stuff. And COVID's been a tough time for a lot of people. So hopefully everybody's able to bounce back and land on their feet in a short time. And maybe with some of these jobs that are gone, maybe when we get back to having test rugby, hopefully some of them will be able to get those jobs back too.
Yeah, a lot of these jobs do seem to be connected with actual, like obviously ticket events, team manager positions. Al Sharon, obviously, being the alumni relations officer, these all are connected because Vanson has said that they are expecting a shortfall, as all professional rugby unions are this year. So they've had like donations from Sport Canada, World Rugby, grants. They have had a small contributions of donations, fundraising, merchandise sales, sponsorship, but it's less than $15 million, which sounds like a lot to us. I mean, I'd love to be donated $15 million, but for a professional organization, it's obviously not enough. They have Tim Powers said the governing body, they're running a number of different models to see reducing in size and expenditure and revenue collection from 25 to 60%. So from the Rugby Canada point of view, it looks like they're not wanting to do this, obviously, but the situation is what it is, and taking into account these kind of things. As for the Halloween weekend, I'll be honest, I had no idea it was going on. I had assumed that all rugby had been cancelled, but I didn't even know. But obviously, because matches hadn't been happening, they weren't promoting the event.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly marketed heavy during once they were. I think they announced it like during COVID too, like when it was still like back in like March or April, when it was still like it's like this will when we were still
after
in that,
2 weeks,
it'll probably be like a couple of months. Everybody's got to like maybe a month when everyone will be like locked up inside. When they were actually still like thinking that we could plan stuff. So unfortunate. But
I'm hoping for 2021 that to make up for this, both days become double headers, and we can have more games going on. And you can increase the ticket price for it, and maybe move it to Toronto. I know it'll be cold, but I will go to any rugby game at this point.
I'll take any excuse to go to Vancouver. They can keep it in Vancouver. I'll fly to Vancouver. Vancouver's awesome.
You know what? So will I.
And you know what? The fans have been really understanding about this as well. I mean, I don't think I've seen a negative comment about it. It's tough, but I think everyone understands COVID's effect on the sporting world.
You know what? We kind of have to and unless Dan, you got anything else that we need to talk about here, or are we about to kind of wrap it up? Okay.
I think so.
All right. So in wrapping it up, though, the one thing that we never did do, which I think we should, what is your actual Arrows backline? They're playing a do or die game tomorrow, or the MLR Championship, which yes, they're going to be playing in. It'll be probably against a Western Conference team. I can guarantee that. But who would your lineup be, your back line, do or die game, Toronto Arrows? Everybody's healthy, everybody's available. Let's hear it.
Ferguson at 9, Adams at 10, Dutoit and Lesage in my midfield, Montero, Tuculet, wings, and then Gonzalez at fullback.
All right. I think Stu. Let's hear yours.
So with my me constantly saying that you need to bleed the youngsters, get them international experience. I chose the youngest players in each of their positions.
It's a do or die championship game, Stu.
Exactly. You need the energy. You need the energy ready to go. You need to have. They're all talented.
I didn't say a
skilled.
developmental or a preseason game. I said a do or die game, the best possible lineup you can put out.
Yeah, and this
let him have his things, Derek.
And this is who I'd pick. I would pick Higgins and Kelly as the starting backs. On the wings, I would have Sheridan and Montero. Centers, I'd have Jones and Richardson. And fullback, I'd have Gonzalez.
I mean, that is the youngest players. Yeah, I'm not sure that's what I would roll with in a do or die game, but those are the youngest players at each position.
And I have full confidence in them.
Full confidence. That's how good this team is.
But then again,
it is actually a decent lineup, though.
If that's my starting 15, just imagine what the bench is going to have.
Yeah. Oh, I see. You're going with my Springbok-esque idea. I would go with. I was kind of debating this one, but it's like I think might go with. And I'm kind of bored. All right, I'll just go with it. Ferguson, Adams, obviously your halfback pairing, and then I would put in the centers. I'm going to put Tuculet and Lesage, and then my back three. So my wingers, I'm going to go with Montero, Mirez, and Gonzalez.
Yeah, that's a lineup. That is a lineup.
Yeah,
I think either or. They're all fantastic lineups.
I mean, you could do Detroit and then have Detroit at center and then have Tuculet in the back or something too. But
yeah,
that's
what I had. I had Detroit at 12 and then Tuculet at wing. It's going to be very interesting to see what the Arrows come up with when they actually start playing some games. But that's where we're going to end it today, gentlemen. I guess we're not actually recording that night, but it doesn't matter for anybody else because who knows when you listen. If you guys want to listen or watch more of our podcasts, you can find us at YouTube. You can also like and follow our Facebook page, which also has all of our videos and links to our podcast, which is available on all of the platforms. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Again, I hope everyone in Canada enjoyed their turkey and their pie and all of their fine foods.